Hello and welcome. I'm Oinikam. I have with me member Niti Aayog, Mr. Vivek Debroy. Sir, thank you so much for your time. First of all, want to know your reaction, your impressions on the budget. Do you think the provisions in the budget will do everything that is necessary for the economy now?
Well, there are 3 or 4 immediate responses that I have. The budget is only one of the several instruments that the government has at its disposal, and the budget happens on only one particular day in a year. This does not mean, therefore, that the other 364 days the government ceases to function. Therefore, some of the expectations that were being articulated by people outside the government, not by people from the government, I think are somewhat unwarranted. All this talk about a big bang and stuff like that, because this budget has to be understood against the backdrop of a continuity in government policies. There are several initiatives that have been in place since 2014, May of 2014, and this budget builds on that. It is incremental. So that I think it's important to appreciate. Having said that, the budget is fundamentally the Union government's annual statement of receipts and expenditure. That's what it is. There is an element of indirect tax reform, but that indirect tax reform we already know that GST is in the works. There is a GST council which is supposed to take decisions about that. There is the direct part. On the direct part, the agenda is very simple, that reduced rates are linked to exemption removal, a fact that people normally don't tend to appreciate, that you cannot have a reduction in rates without the exemptions going. And until there's a consensus on exemptions going, therefore the reduced rates won't happen. A little bit of the reduction has happened, but let me not get into that right now. So is it all resources are limited, and there is an opportunity cost of resources. If I'm going to use the resources for this, I won't have that available for doing something else. So the issue was very simple. The issue is the same for every finance minister. Do I use the resources that are available at my disposal to fritter it away in terms of giving concessions, tax concessions, or do I use it for public investments that enhance the country's productive potential in the slightly medium term, with a particular focus on the transport sector? That is what the finance minister has consciously done, and those public investments are often necessary as a trigger to catalyze private sector investments. And how do I do all of this without sacrificing the goal of fiscal consolidation? So given all of this, I think this budget is pretty good.
We were always expecting, experts also mentioned that because the tax collections have gone up, everybody was hopeful of some kind of tweaking with the tax slabs, more relaxations and also to boost consumer spending.
No, but look, firstly, tax collections have gone up. I don't know. Because if you look at the second income declaration scheme, everything that is declared is not money that comes into the consolidated fund. What comes into the consolidated fund is out of what has been declared, what is paid in the form of taxes and what is paid in the form of penalties. The window for that is the end of March. So I don't know what that figure is going to be. But whatever be the figure, there is that trade-off that you can legitimately expect, as the so-called urban educated middle class, a reduction in the rates. But you cannot simultaneously expect that and simultaneously expect that the railway stations will become better, the national highways will become better, the airports will become better. You cannot have both. And unfortunately, most people do not recognize this trade-off. They recognize this trade-off when they are managing their household budgets, but they think that somehow the union government's budget is different. There isn't an infinite kitty. There are plenty of exemptions, which are essentially in the nature of fiscal concessions, both on the direct side and on the indirect side. And for several years now, together with the budget papers, there is a statement which is called a revenue foregone statement, which is revenue that I lose because of these exemptions, both on the direct and on the indirect side. And depending on the year, if you add all of that up, it comes to more than 5% of GDP. Today, if I look at union government and state government together, the tax GDP ratio is just over 17%. Had these exemptions not been there, the tax GDP ratio would have been 22%. Now that's money that the government could have spent, or governments, because some of it goes to the state governments, could have spent on various public goods and services. What these exemptions also do is that we often tend to think of tax evasion. Obviously there's some tax evasion, but there's a difference between tax evasion and tax avoidance. Tax evasion is when I'm doing something that's illegal. Tax avoidance is when I'm using legitimate channels to reduce my taxes. And because of these tax exemptions, both on the direct and the indirect side, what happens is there is a lot of litigation about interpretation. There is the unleashing of an inspectorage on taxpayers. Also, it makes compliance costs very high. So the exemptions per se should go, they are inefficient. When the finance minister first said in his budget speech that the corporate tax rate would be reduced to 25%, in that same sentence he said this is contingent on the exemptions being removed. That's what I meant by saying that these are two sides of the same coin. I cannot expect the tax rate to be reduced while the exemptions continue.
Thank you all for watching. Keep watching this space for more.